All right, g'day Navicastarians. Welcome to your this week's Jetstream AMA. Absolutely honoured and privileged to be joined by a Jets legend. It's got to be said, all the way back from season 1 and 2. A fan favourite, has to be said. Legend, champion, Nicky Carle. Nick, thanks very much for joining us today, mate. Really appreciate you giving us the time.
Not a problem at all, mate. Happy to do so.
How's everything been going with you during the whole pandemic thing? Obviously, it's been affecting everybody in different ways. You're involved with kids coaching and all that sort of thing now. How's the lockdown and now getting back to sort of normal with social distancing restrictions and everything? How's that sort of affecting how you do things on a day-to-day basis?
Look, it's given us a lot more work, let me tell you. But no, look, it's something that no one's planned for, prepared, or had a guideline. What we managed to do was keep the kids very active and motivated during it. We came up with creative ways. So we were really happy as a club where I'm working at the moment. We managed to keep them engaged, which I felt was super important for kids. And funny enough, we had some great results. It was a lot more work, even coming back with the small numbers was a absolute nightmare to manage, but we managed to get back on the park as soon as we were allowed. And I just feel it's important to get the kids playing games again. It's what they want to do. We didn't want a year of no development and no football. So super happy to be back on. Actually, tomorrow is our first game. So the whole club is super excited.
Awesome. Now, I will just quickly mention before we get properly underway, I apologise for my audio quality. For some reason, this big microphone here is not connecting with Zoom properly. So if I sound a little bit tinny on the recording, that will be why. All right, so we'll sort of jump all the way back to the beginning, Nick. Actually, before we do that, with regards to communication between the league, the FFA, local clubs and stuff, we've been hearing a lot in the media about what's happening at the A-League level, but there doesn't really seem to be a great deal of information on what's happening in the lower leagues and with youth football. What sort of picture can you paint for us about how that's been with regards to getting information about getting back underway? Obviously, things like that are all sort of sorted now, but how was it over the last couple of months trying to get yourself organised and not sort of really knowing when you're coming back and what was the levels of communication like coming from the top?
Look, I think obviously for everyone, it was a very difficult period. So I guess it's not in anyone's place to do a blame game at the moment. We didn't have this good enough because no one was or has experienced something like this before. But I know that everyone involved did their best to try and get football up and running again, which for me is the most important thing, So a lot of stuff could have been done better, but so much good in people doing their best to try and get the game. Do I agree with everything? No. Am I happy that we're going back? 1,000,000%. So we were in constant dialogue with Football New South Wales. And like I said, everyone will look back at it and go, we could have done this better, that better. But the fact that everyone was on the same page to trying to get kids football up and running as soon as possible is a massive plus.
And we've had obviously some good news stories over the last couple of weeks with the A-League coming back in mid-July and the next season going to be from December to June, as well as the Women's World Cup coming here. That was a massive bit of news. So how will those sorts of good news stories, how will that sort of, the benefits of those filter down to where your situation is? Does any of those benefits come down and benefit youth football at all, or are you sort of still waiting to see how those things sort of line up?
Well, look, something like a World Cup is massive, absolutely massive. So we're hoping that does take the game here in Australia. I guess everyone knows that we're in a bit of a holding pattern or struggling a bit, and we needed that next boost. Hopefully that's it. Hopefully, like a lot of people said, the reset button has been hit and it can take off from there. I know from a women's football point of view, juniors in football, it's gonna shoot up. I mean, just in my program, I have a very talented female player who plays with the boys in our under-14s boys. Up until last year, she was playing a year up in the boys, and now we're MPL1 and she's playing in the 14 boys, and her eyes have just lit up and given her a new lease of life, thinking, well, can I be a part of that, you know? So from football in general, participation, I believe you'll massively shoot up, and I think everyone needs to get on the back of that to implement better strategies and make sure football is in a better place.
What are your thoughts on the A-League moving to a winter thing? Obviously, it's not set in stone. That's going to be how it goes from now on. But do you see positives and negatives for how it's been and what we're moving to? Or do you think we should stick to summer? Or are you more in favour of the new winter switch, or it doesn't really worry you?
Personally, I like playing in the summer months because it slowed everyone down. I got a bit more time on the ball. I wanted to pick a player. But no, I do believe football has to come out of it as its own identity and stop trying to compete and have a longer season, full stop. So whether that runs through summer, winter, if we run a longer season, it's going to impact most time anyway. I just like to see more football on a regular basis. I think that's super important. I think, as everyone knows, we have the longest preseason in history, the longest off season. So if we can get more games over a longer period, irrelevant of the timing, and I know the quality has always been said to be better in winter, but at some point, if you start in December, you're in summer anyway.
Yeah.
I think more football is super important.
All right. Well, someone who was in the A-League from the get-go, just as a sort of an offhand question, how many teams do you think are about ideal for the A-League? And are you in favour of having a New Zealand team in and more New Zealand teams in, or are you thinking that we should be looking at more Australian teams in the league?
I'm in favour of having a B League. I think that's super important. Obviously, I don't feel we have the capacity at the moment to have a 20-team league in Australia. So my personal thought process is, how quickly can we have a B League, which is professionally run?
Yeah.
People always keep saying cost. Well, I get we don't have enough cost to run 10 more teams in the A League or 8 more teams or whatever it may need to be to make it a great competition. But the B League is super important for all the young players. I mean, I was lucky enough to debut at a very young age, as lots of players were back in my day. This day and age is very, very hard due to the number of teams. And then you look at it and you go to the State League, Premier Leagues that get played. And I'm in that environment and I'm super happy and super grateful to be in it. But the fact of the matter is, you have people working all day and they're training 2 to 3 times a week, full stop. Yeah. It's not enough for your young players coming through. So I'm a massive believer, if you can get a B League that's a professional league and everyone knows the budgets aren't going to be big. But I'm telling you, a 15, 16, 20-year-old kid will be happy to play for minimum wage, given a chance to be a professional. Yeah. And I think we'll bridge that gap. So when an A-League club needs a player, they'll go to the B League because this guy's been in a professional environment for the last 2-3 years and he's developed as a player. Where I find now is we've got so much talented players and people go, oh, we don't have the same players coming through.
Yeah.
I work in the youth side of football. There's ridiculous amount of good players. They just get to a point and it stops.
Yeah.
So they got nowhere to go. There's nowhere to play and push on, where back in my day, there was 18 to 20 teams in the old NSL. When they needed a player, they had to go to the youth team to get a player, hence why I debuted at such a young age.
Yeah.
In modern day football today, in the A-League scenario, I wouldn't have debuted and had a professional career out of it. It might have taken me till 19, 20. By that time, I might have been working, not being able to dedicate as much time and effort to my football. So yeah. I just think the B League is, for me, the most important thing to give more opportunities to players to come through.
Yeah, and it's definitely something that's come up in previous chats we've had with a couple of other people, Dutchy especially.
And if people look, my opinion is, if someone's not willing to have less wage to be a part of a B League, then they don't want to be footballers, especially
Yep.
at that age. I mean, we're going back to the A League. We're on a 1.5 salary cap. All players had to agree to it at the start if they wanted to play in the A League.
Yep.
And I know there was players who opted not to play because they could earn more working. That was their decision.
Yeah.
But there were so many of us that took pay cuts and went, no, we want a professional league. We want to be professionals, and managed to have good careers out of it. So I'm telling you, the B League, given the B League shouldn't be a league where it's catered for super old players, and that's not being disrespectful at all, but there should be a quota that you got to have 3 players on the field from 17 to 20s, 6 players from 20 to 23, 2 or 3 senior boys who lead your team and know that you're experienced. But at any point in time, you've got to have X amount of young players that's giving opportunities.
Yeah.
And
Excellent.
they're full-time players.
All right. Well, we'll go back to the beginning, Nick. Whereabouts did you grow up, and where did you start? Where did the love of football start? Where did you first start playing when you were a youngster?
Ingleburn Eagles, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So we used to live out at Ingleburn and started playing for Ingleburn Eagles. And look, I can't remember anything but playing football. So for me, it was very, very simple. I was going to be a footballer, full stop.
Yeah.
As a youngster, I always played up a few ages, 2 years up, purely because my brother was in that team. So I think that helped me immensely, although I don't believe it's for everyone. But I was a very competitive person and wanted to win at everything I did. And I felt that was the only one good thing I was good at. I know the boys will take the piss out of me if they see me playing cricket or golf, or it just doesn't happen for me. So
Yeah.
I was good at that. I didn't enjoy doing anything else because if I'm that competitive, if I wasn't good at it, I wouldn't do it. So absolutely loved it. But look, watching Maradona play as a youngster sort of gave me the drive to want to be a footballer, you know. But yeah, all I can remember is I wanted to be a footballer.
But did the love of football come through your family, or it was something you had on your own? And did you have a football club you supported growing up?
No, funny enough, not. We just obviously played the game, and I remember everywhere I was, I had a ball. So I loved playing, had a ball everywhere I went. So it was really a matter of drive from within. I remember playing indoor when I was a youngster. I absolutely loved it. And it was such a small environment, 4v4, so many touches on the ball. And again, the biggest thing I'd say is I was a super competitive person and still am, which I think sort of gave me more love for the game as well.
Now, when you went from when you're sort of coming up through Ingleburn, who are your sort of big influences and mentors? Who were the sort of the people shaping the way you play football once you sort of turned professional?
Look, I started at Ingleburn Eagles, which is a small little club, but I enjoyed my football there. I was only young at the time, but then sort of got a bit more serious and ended up at clubs like Marconi, Southern Districts, Blacktown City. So I went through more the pathways, but I think the best move I made was as a 13-year-old. I was at a Marconi team that was the bee's knees. We were very, very good squad. And in pre-season, me and my brother switched and we went to Olympic.
Yep.
An Olympic at the time for that age group wasn't the strongest squad, which meant I had to work harder. So going to Olympic was probably the best thing I did. I was lucky enough as a 13-year-old, I got identified already by the youth team. It was Nick, and I'm not even going to try say his surname. But I was super lucky. He gave me a chance at 13 years old to step up to the youth team where if I was at Marconi, it probably wouldn't have happened because the amount of talent that was there. So I think that challenge really helped me. So it wasn't about me being in the best team. It was about me being the hardest worker in a team. So I think that move was super important for me. But I was super lucky. I had some super influences at Olympic. I mean, senior pros who took me under their wings, like Peter Sekenis. He was probably, if not the best captain I've had in my career. You know, he would smash you on the ball and he'll pick you up until you keep going. And then as a 15-year-old, if I tackled him back at training because I wouldn't pull out, and I would apologise, and he'd say, "No, well done. That's part of playing," you know. So I was very lucky. The change room that I managed to have as a 15-year-old with first grade, I was really, really lucky.
Yeah, well, that's school of hard knocks type type mentality. One of many Brett Griffo questions on Twitter. We'll sort of sprinkle them through as we have a chat. He asked, "What were the contributing factors to your youth development and technique, and what do you think can be improved in today's youth development?" Well, you sort of answered partially in those sorts of questions, but was there any other factors you think that allowed you to flourish? And when did were you always a creative midfielder coming through the ranks, or did you try a couple of different positions? How did the silky skills get developed? When did those sorts of things start to rear their head?
I think the skills, a big part of my skill set was playing indoor. As a youngster, I think the amount of touches you get on a ball in a tight, confined space, and the ball's quicker, so quicker thought process, quicker decisions. I feel that really helped my skills. Obviously, being with the ball all the time was massive, you know. And then I think times have changed now. Times have gone to kids don't go down the local park and kick. Kids don't play in their backyard. And obviously, life's changed. Parents don't trust their kids to go by themselves down to the park. So it's very, very different times. Backyards have gotten a lot smaller in modern times. So kids don't go in the backyard and kick as much.
Yeah.
But in saying all that, I definitely believe the defining aspect of me making it, not making it, was my attitude and will to win. Being a winner was probably my biggest thing that I think got me through. But again, I also say there was a lot of talented boys. It was a lot of talented boys now is based on having the opportunity as well when I was younger.
Do you see those same attitudes in kids nowadays that you had when you were younger? That drive to win, that attitude that you identify as one of the contributing factors. Do you still see that coming through kids now, or is it slightly different? They've got to be pushed more.
No, you definitely got kids with the same attributes. Probably better technically than when we were young. And I know people are going to say, "Oh, no way." I'm telling you, I work day in, day out. And some of the things kids do these days, I'm like, wow. I know kids at 9, 10 years old are doing around the world, and I couldn't even do it as a senior pro. So my point is that they do, but it's gone more to kids. You got to train, or kids, you got to go to an academy and train, where it's not so much their own learning in the backyard, going out the back and doing 3 hours worth of shooting because you want to be the best striker and thinking you're playing in a World Cup and having shots. So it's a lot more structured. A lot more parents are paying for services. Not to say it's bad. It's just the way things have gone. But definitely see attributes in young players. I just don't believe there's opportunities.
Yeah. All right. So you spent 5 seasons in the NSL with Sydney Olympic, making your senior debut in the '97 season. Fairly consistent sort of couple of goals a season. Really sort of picked up around the sort of 99, 2001 mark. You were sort of the third and fourth season, really definitely got a lot of games. How do you look back at those years at Sydney Olympic, and what did you sort of learn from that time period that sort of helped you through the rest of your career?
Well, I have to say, and please, this is not being disrespectful to any of the clubs I've been at, because I've really enjoyed different experiences, but I believe the 2 clubs that I played my best football and enjoyed the most was Sydney Olympic. I was only young, had the world at my feet. I had really good change room, players I learned a lot of, some super players I played with. Olympic was amazing, and the Jets was the second club because I felt I was at my prime there and did really well, and the relationship I had with the fans was amazing. Still the best place I've had with a fan relationship anywhere I went in my career. So they're the two places I enjoyed the most. Although I do think that at Olympic, my biggest plus side was my biggest detriment because debuting at 15 years old, and I believe at 15 I was really ahead of the game for my age at that point. But I had 3 or 4 starts at the back end of that year. So for a 15-year-old starting, it was ridiculous. And given I got played a bit more up top because I was smaller than everyone and so young, but I always liked playing more midfield. But growing up, I played left back. JP at Marconi as a youngster coached me and played me left back. So I played a few different positions. I don't think positions are important as a young kid. But the first year after Jeff Harkham got sacked, Branko Chelina came in. And he was there for a few years. And not to say it hindered my development, but it was a space where I went for 2 years where I would come off the bench nearly every game because Branko, I thought I was a good impact player and he liked me, but I was still young.
Yeah.
Where a lot of the boys went to the AIS, my age group back then, and got 2 years of regular football, which I didn't. Although I was in a first grade environment, which was great, I wasn't playing reps, which I felt that was the one thing that really hindered me.
Yeah.
And given, please understand, this is no one's fault. I was in a first grade environment. In hindsight, maybe I should have gone to the AIS, but I was already playing senior football, getting paid. So might have been my own doing. I'm not blaming any coaches for not blaming. I'm not blaming Branko, but how it worked out is I don't remember playing too many youth games because I was always on the bench and always came on. Yeah. Every few weeks I'd get a game in. But at a really crucial age, from 16 to 18, I was super professional, worked super hard, but didn't play as many minutes as would have been important in those ages, which I felt hindered me, but absolutely loved my time there. Olympic I was blessed. They gave me my opportunity, a great club to play at, great supporters, and had a really good time there. Even the year they won it, I left halfway through that year. What a team we played with. And I think the masterstroke was me leaving because they managed to get into that because we had an amazing squad. We had a brilliant squad. We didn't have as many goals. And when I left with the transfer fee, they went and I think the story goes that they paid $100,000 out of my transfer to buy Ante Milicic from United. Yeah. And we ended up winning the league that year. So, look, some great people, and I dealt with great players and a lot of fond memories.
Now, that was your transfer to France, the one you were talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. So, Troyes, what was the reason behind going to France at that time, and what are your memories of playing over there?
Well, the back end, the 2 last seasons while at Olympic, I really came into my own, won my starting position, was a regular player. And that last season, I was actually playing really, really well. Gary Johnson had come in and sort of said to me, where do you want to play? Branko saw me more as a striker. And I said, as a 10. And he said, well, I'm not sure if you'd be able to do that role, but I'll let you try it. And I did really well and kept my position. And I was having a blinder season that year. I was really happy with my performances. So I'd been on a few trials here and there, but nothing had sort of really jumped at me. And when I went to France, it was, for me, at the time, a brilliant move. I got there and everyone was as technical as me. There was great players there. We had a coach called Alain Perrin, and I was blessed to have him. And the problem was I only had him for 6 months. Yeah. One of the smartest coaches I ever had, managed his players so well. And they just sold a player, Rodden, who was an amazing player, went on to be a massive player. And they saw me as a replacement for him. So I got there. I'd been there only for a few weeks. And luckily enough, I got opportunities to play straight away and did really, really well. I was really happy with the way I was going. Got myself in the starting team. My wife now was, the day she was flying over, we played Bordeaux at home, which we won, I did my knee.
Oh, no.
So I was out for the back end of that season. I tried to play through it. It didn't get better. So I ended up having an operation, which was a massive shame because I'd got myself in the team, was doing really well. Alan Perrin gave plenty of opportunities to young boys. He was, as I said, an amazing coach.
Yeah.
And I was considered a young boy, even though I'd been in the senior team for 5 years. When I got there, I was considered a young boy. As it pans out, I get back for my second pre-season there. I went from being number 32 to doing really well in that period. I got back. I had the number 10 hanging on my locker, and I thought, wow, super happy. Alan Perrin goes to Marseille, gets a move out of Troyes, which, if you see the results he got with such a small club, he was gone sooner or later. And that was my biggest downfall in France.
Yeah.
We got a coach. We'd finished 7th that season, which was massive for Troyes. We got a coach that came in. I can't even remember his name, to tell you the truth. That's how much of an influence he had in my career. Played me as a left back a game, and then I never played again. But he brought in, he was in the 2nd division over there, brought in a lot of players from the 2nd division, and given new coaches, new players, didn't have trust in the youth boys, the younger boys, and didn't play for a year. Got one chance in a trial match, and it was coming up to the end of the year, and we'd gone down. So we went from coming 7th to going down, and none of the young boys playing, and we'd get dropped to the 2nd team, and the 2nd team we did really well. If memory serves me right, we won it that year or came 2nd. But it wasn't good for my development at the time. I needed to be playing senior football.
Yeah.
In hindsight, if the coach wouldn't have stayed, I should have stayed. I didn't. I ended up coming home to Marconi.
Yeah.
But I did it because I wanted to go to the Olympics. I'd done really well in the qualifiers. Frank Farina at the time told me, you need to be playing senior football regular to get to the Olympics. So I came home and didn't work out the way it was planned to.
Yeah, I was going to say you didn't end up getting selected for that Olympic squad, if I remember correctly. And
Which was massive disappointment. I'd been part of 2 Olympic campaigns. So by that point, I'd been part of 2 under-20s, the 17s, 2 under-20s. I didn't go to the first 20s World Cup. I was injured at the time. I went to the second one, 2 Olympic campaigns, and I didn't deserve to make the first Olympic campaign. That was at Sydney. I was a young boy, and we had some quality players, and then I always felt it was amazing that I was in and amongst it and done the whole campaign with them, and I didn't make the final squad, but it was never, I got hard done by. I definitely felt the second campaign, I really got hard done by, and that's my own personal point of view.
Yeah.
Everyone has their reasons, and obviously coaching's a very tough thing, but that one was one that I couldn't understand. When Gary Moretti rang me, he was the team manager at the time. He was just as shocked as I was, and I'd had a private conversation with Frank years ago, and I'd never spoken about it to media and stuff, but I did let him know that I was super disappointed and felt hard done by, because I'd done so well to help the team qualify. I mean, we were struggling. We were playing a game at Parramatta Stadium against New Zealand, and we were struggling. I came on for the last half hour and turned the game on its head. We ended up going to New Zealand. We qualified. I then went and got in the top 5 players of the NSL that year, playing for Marconi, me and Ahmed. We got gifted the opportunity to go and debut for the national team in Venezuela. Me and Ahmed were the only ones out of the Olympic team. And 2 months later, he didn't pick me in the squad. It was mind-boggling.
Yeah. Did he ever give you reasons why, or it was just one of those things you never found out what the reasoning behind it was?
I don't know. I don't know if it was a stats thing. I really don't know. I remember what they mentioned something about stats that Ron Corrie was doing, and stats are stats. But if you're an attacking player and you're a creative player, you're going to not have as good a stats, but how decisive are your stats? how dangerous were they? So I guess I don't know if that started coming into play at that time.
Yep.
And by all accounts, Frank had mentioned that to me in the chat I had with him. But again, the reasoning I got out of it, I didn't agree. I let him know that. And then obviously I kept it confidential, and I did the right thing. I did not speak to the media. I didn't say boo. I got so many phone calls at the time for me to hammer him and hammer the team. And I told him I wouldn't. I told him what I felt at the time in a private conversation.
Yep.
But I didn't go into the media. I didn't think it was the right thing to do. I was very respectful. But yeah, I was dumbfounded and honestly felt I was hard done by them.
Yeah. What about while we're talking about representing the national team, and I had it for later, but we may as well skip ahead. You obviously had a bit of struggling trying to get selected by some of these Socceroos coaches at the time. If you mentioned Frank Farina, Gus Hiddink didn't play you at all. You did go to the Asia Cup in 2007 under Graham Arnold, and then seemed to fall into issues with Pim Verbeek. Was there a tendency at the time for coaches to prioritise more? How would you describe it? Not go with the more creative players and go with more of the workhorse and versatile players that can play in a number of different positions rather than take a chance on a creative player such as yourself? Was that some of the reasoning behind why maybe it didn't end up as good for you in the Socceroos perspective? Because there were so many people wanting you to play for Socceroos, it was ridiculous.
I think football's a game based on opinions. I'm honest in my own ability I had as a player. I find myself very honest in my own ability, and obviously for me it was an absolute honour to play for the national team. And every time I did, I loved it. I was involved in a lot more squads than I actually played games. I think I only got 13 caps, but I was involved in a lot more squads.
Yeah,
didn't come on, so they don't count. But I felt that for my generation, there was so much talent in our positions. Please don't misunderstand me and saying that I shouldn't have made it coaches' decisions, but when I got Player of the Year, Arnie took me to the Asian Cup, and I worked my butt off in that Asian Cup. I worked so hard. I didn't get many minutes, but I came on in the Japan game when we lost on penalties.
Yeah.
Post that, we went and played a game in England. We played against Nigeria at Fulham's home ground, and I got a start.
Yeah.
And I played super well, had an absolute blind day. And it was an interim coach at that time who had seen me in the Asian Cup. He was at the Asian Cup. So he started me. He loved my work rate, how hard I'd work, and how much I wanted to play. And he started me against Nigeria. And I felt that game against Nigeria. We played a diamond midfield. I played the top of the diamond and played really well, given we had some of the bigger boys missing that game, although Harry did play that day. Anyway, cut a long story short, I thought I had a blind day, and that was going to be my building block to stay in the national team.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Pim came in, and I never had an issue with Pim. Never had an issue with him at all. I found he was a really nice guy. I just don't think his football perspective of me was that I was good enough. And then everyone's entitled to their opinion. What I will say is we were absolutely blessed with super talent at my time coming through in my positions. Players like Harry, Bresciano, and I know everyone rates Bresciano highly. I still think he's one of the most underrated players we've had because he was better than what people thought. Timmy Cahill, who scored goals. Didn't matter what he did, he scored goals. Brett Holman, which I know there was always many debates of. It should be me instead of Brad or Brett. Brett was an absolute champion. We were close mates and still are, but an unbelievable player. So it was based on personal preference. Did I feel I could have done a job? 100%. Do I think I could have contributed, whether that was starting or coming on and changing the game, especially in tight areas where teams are sitting back and we need a result? I always felt that I could do something. but he was based on personal opinion and
Yeah.
never had a falling out with Pim Verbeek. I actually thought he was a gentleman.
Yeah.
A real nice guy. Unfortunately, football opinions, that's football.
Yep, absolutely. All right, well, we'll get on to happier times now that you mentioned earlier. You spent some time when you came back from France at Marconi before ending up signing for the Jets. How did the negotiations and contract come? Obviously, first season of a new competition, and all the clubs are looking for players. So how did the Jet signing come about? And were you being courted by any other clubs at the time? A couple of players that we've spoken to that were around that time. I think Tomo was pretty close to signing for Central Coast, and what a change in fortune that would have been for another Jets legend from back in that time. But how close was the decision to you signing for the Jets, or was there another club that was close at the time as well? How did that whole coming to Newcastle end up?
For me, it was pretty easy. I had JP at Marconi and Tomo was there with me. And I think that was an easy decision because although when I had JP as an 11-year-old boy coaching me, then I played with him at my first year, first grade. And let me tell you, I could not stand JP for a year then when he played with me. And please don't take that the wrong way. I absolutely love JP. He's a great guy. But gosh, I hated him as an older pro. And we had our run-ins, we had our fights. And when I got back to Australia and he rang me and said, I want you at Marconi, I was very hesitant to go. I'd spoken to Parramatta Power. Olympic at the time weren't that interested, and Parramatta Power offered me something. But JP, and it wasn't a money decision at all then. I was young. I just wanted to play football and I wanted to be wanted. Parramatta Power was a super gun team. They had all the players spending big money, and I felt the offer they gave me was, okay, you're just one of the boys, another player. It didn't value me where I felt I was at the time, and JP offered me less, but worked his backside off to get me over the line. So although I didn't enjoy my time with him, playing with him, I gave him a go as a coach, and it was the best thing I did. He going to Marconi instead of Parramatta Power, it really worked for me. I love the way he coaches. He's so determined, wants to win. He's got the fire in his belly. So it worked really well. So even going to Newcastle became an easy choice for me to follow. And I'd done really well at Marconi, so he wanted me to go. There was talks of Sydney, but I think they got quashed when they got Bimby, Steve Corica.
Yep.
But it was very easy. I went up, and I remember going up and having lunch with Con and Remo, and loved both of them. Had a really good relationship with both of them.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved Con to death. I know he's very old school and different in his ways.
Yeah.
But what a legend. So I was blessed. Some of the stories I could tell you about Con, the meetings I had with him, I love the bloke and still do.
Yeah. Feel free. There's plenty of time for stories. So you got one that you can pick out that's good for all ages.
Yeah, I don't think they're good for all ages. So
No, fair enough. No worries. So look, first season of a new competition. How did you find the difference between your time playing in the NSL and then starting in the A-League? How did you find that experience overall, the change in professionalism? Did you find it more of a step up between the two competitions, or was there still how did you find it?
Lucky that at Sydney Olympic we were full time, so we'll train in the mornings, and I love that. The last year when I came back to Marconi, we used to train at nights, but I was still full time. I did nothing else. I'd go to the gym during the day and then go to Marconi at night. So I still live my life like a professional. But yeah, so it wasn't. I know for a few clubs there was a difference, but I love the full-time professional football thing. I loved waking up, going to training. When we trained in the morning, it was so much better than training at night. So no, I felt that. Again, the last year of the NSL probably wasn't its highest level, but before that, you had some quality teams, some quality players. So it's the old NSL was a very good league for youngsters to come through in. So, and some very good players playing in it. So it wasn't a massive jump. What I felt was a massive difference is different team names, different colours, excitement around the league. So it was new, which I enjoyed.
Yeah.
And I think I love the whole thing of, I know Newcastle Jets was Newcastle Breakers before, or there was a Newcastle team, but the start of it and being part of the start and a really great bunch of boys that we had up there. And I really enjoyed my 2 seasons there.
So JP was one of the main reasons you going to Newcastle, but there was already issues before the season started with the whole court case with Con, and him ended up bringing in Richard Money. How did you find? Was that a little bit of a grey cloud for you, or were you happy to continue on? Obviously, like I said, JP was a big reason you moved to Newcastle, and then after a short period of time, he's removed and someone else is brought in. Did you find that a bit of a detriment?
There. So JP was still there. Richard Money came in, but again, everyone understands that football is so versatile, so volatile. I mean, I was in Turkey for 6 months and had 4 coaches. That's the truth of the matter. So as a footballer, you have to do what's best. But I really enjoyed the first few months of living up there. I love the team, and I absolutely loved living in Newcastle. So I was happy to stay around when Richard came in. And he was the top guy. He was a very nice guy, and I enjoyed playing under him.
Yeah, I was going to ask, but that was literally the next question. How did you find him to work for, and how did his style suit the way you played?
Look, it was different. It was more rigid in a 4-4-2, and I played as a left midfielder, as a 4-4-2, which was different. But again, you learn different things in times. But I felt I actually played better in the first season than I did in the second, and I got Player of the Year in the second. I felt that first season I played really well under Richard. Given opinions, football, everyone has their own. But as on a personal level, I felt I had a really good season, and I guess that's where the relationship with me and the fans started, because I'd come in and I'd done really well in that first year. And then again, we had a brilliant side. You had Teza, Selic, you had some really good boys. Jura. Unfortunately, what happened with Jura, his broken leg, but we had a really good group and good people. Matty Thompson. I remember Mattel Codball, one of the funniest, craziest guys I've played with. But yeah, we had a really good squad.
Yeah, and names from folklore like Alan Picken and Guy Bates and obviously we had Jado and Labby as well. Who were the players that you got on really well with in that first season, and what was Ned like to play alongside?
Obviously, Matty Thompson. Me and Matty Thompson are still very close mates. Andrew Durrani is one of my best mates. He was in my bridal party. And obviously lives have taken us in different paths, but someone I really, really respect as a person and as a mate. So they were 2 of my closest mates in the teams. But you had young players coming through as well, like Bridgie, who was an absolute legend, great kid and a really good person. Stewie, Joby Willhouse. I think it was a real close-knit team. Again, due to factors, Jura I knew from beforehand, and Matty I knew, and we became really close at Marconi. I loved all the boys. It was a really good team network. So I can't say favourites, but Zella was a special character. He was different, Zella was moody, but a really nice guy. Someone that I think you had to, because he'd played at such a high level, you had to earn his respect. But really got along well with Zella, but was very different in terms of a character in the change room.
And it was a bit of a surprise he came back, because I think he'd gotten cut from the Socceroos squad fairly soon before the A-League kicked off. So from what I remember correctly, media reports were a bit surprised we were actually able to get him.
Yeah,
And what was it like around the squad when you'd found out that you were going to be playing alongside? I mean, because a player that had been excellent for so long, so many moments of individual brilliance.
well, an absolute legend in football. So we obviously were all excited and in awe of him, I believe, at the start. But like I said, we were super lucky to have someone like that, and even more lucky, or as lucky, the following year to be able to get Paul Ogon in. So we were blessed. I found we were blessed to have players like that to play with, learn off. But as I said, he was a different character in the change room.
Yeah.
But I really got along with him. I think he wanted to win, very demanding, which I watched the Michael Jordan documentary, and then they're the ones that are normally the best, you know. Yeah. So you see why he had such a good career.
We'll jump onto the second season in a sec, but comparing the two squads, a lot of people really regard the season 2 squad as being probably one of the best teams the Jets have ever had in their history, even now. How you agree with the squad in the second season being one of the best we've ever had?
100%. Yeah. No doubt about it. We actually won it the third year, and I'll still argue black and blue that we were a better squad the second year. And I think the change of Nick getting sacked and Gary taking over was a masterstroke. I think Nick had lost the change room.
Yep.
We had the players there, and I guess it showed. If you got rid of those first 7 games, we were by far the highest scoring team, highest points team. We were by far the best team, and I think we showed it that last game against Melbourne Victory at home when Muskie walked off. And we gave him an absolute football lesson. I think it was 4-1 at that game. But 4-0. I remember Muskie, or 4-0, I remember Muskie grabbing his armband, throwing it off and taking himself off. And that was a massive tick to how good our squad was, you know.
Yeah.
I still believe till today, had we won that penalty shootout, or Bridgie's going to kill me for saying this, had Bridgie scored that goal in extra time that I did the little backheel to him and the goalkeeper from Adelaide saved. Had he scored that, I'm not saying he should have scored it, but had he scored that, because he was on a tight angle, had he scored that, they're memories that stand out to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm telling you, we would have won in Melbourne that year. We were the only team to beat Melbourne twice that year. We beat them in Melbourne, and we beat them we absolutely destroyed them at home. And I think the first game was a draw, if memory serves me right. But we were the only team that had the wood on them, and they end up being Adelaide by 5. But I definitely feel that second team was one of the best groups that I'd played in.
Yeah, and your memories around the end of that season were pretty much the exact carbon copy from Dutchy and Tomo when we spoke to them a few weeks ago. We'll just quickly finish off talking about season 1. So the first season with the Jets, you ended up finishing 4th, scraped into the finals. We only won 2 out of the last 7 games, unfortunately. Did you remember any specific reasons for that late sort of season slump? Injuries, just style of play? Other teams had worked it out. What do you have any memories of the end of the first season?
No, I know we ended up losing to Central Coast, but if you look at squads to squads, I felt we were a far better and more complete squad the second year. So it was a good first year without being amazing, although I felt personally I'd had a really good season that year and we could grow on it. And I definitely feel the second year we did. I think the signings we brought in made a big difference. I mean, we went out and got Griffo, who was massive for us, Coveney, Milton Rodriguez. And I remember this is like negotiating Milton's contract. He came to train with us. We were away and someone had brought him in for a trial and we saw him for one session doing a finishing session. And we went up to Theo and went, you got to sign this guy. Don't even think about it. Just sign him. And he couldn't negotiate at the time. So he couldn't speak the language. I was the only one who spoke Spanish. So I pretty much negotiated his contract. And what a player he was. So that front 5 we had, and remember one always had to miss out, was ridiculous. You had me in the 10. Bridgie could play 10 as well. You had Bridgie left wing or Milton. You had Vaughan as your 9 and Joe as your 7. What a front 5 that you could play in any order was phenomenal. And you still had your Matty Thompson who'd get up and down for you. You had Ocon, Jado, Dura was back, Kohler, Stewie, Joby. Look, the team was ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you end up getting an agent's percentage for that fee you cut for Milton? Or
I didn't, but I was just happy to have him on board. Like I said, we saw him for the one session when he was doing finishing, and we went up and said, mate, you've got to sign him.
Yeah.
You have to sign this guy, and we made the right move. But that season started very slow, and actually was really disappointed how it ended as well, because I felt we should have won it. But the aftermath of that, I was super disappointed in.
Yeah. Your memories of the early seasons F3 derbies. So season 1, season 2. Obviously, we ended up getting knocked out by them in that qualifying game in season 1. There was all the stuff going on from the Ocean thing.
As well, yeah.
What were your memories of that?
Because blatantly, I hated Central Coast. I hated Sydney and I hated Central Coast. Obviously, it was a close one for me. I was involved in both games that Andrew had broken his leg. The first game was Marconi, and as I mentioned before, we were really close mates. So that hit home hard, seeing one of your best mates with a broken leg. Although I was in the opposition team, I still was, it hit me hard. And then obviously knowing that was Jura's first game back, that just spiked the rivalry. And then I think I was blessed that I had a few mates at Central Coast that saved me that day, because I stayed in the tunnel waiting for Merger after he'd broken his leg, and we had our words, and their boys, it was literally just me. All my boys were in the change room, and the boys that liked me grabbed me and put me in the change room before I got belted, because it was their whole team. Look, it sparked the rivalry, and you wanted to beat them, and obviously super disappointed that we got knocked out by them. And I think they had the wood on us that first year. They really did. They just managed to get the job done.
All right, so jumping to the second season, Richard Money departs and Nick Theodorakopoulos comes in. Obviously, you sort of touched on it before. You think he lost the dressing room, but was that down to his man management, his style of play? Where do you think it all went wrong for Nick?
Look, he worked us super hard in the preseason. He worked us ridiculously hard. I remember the day we did the beep test, and then he turned around and said, yep, 5 minutes and we're going again. And I lost it. I'm like, what? But yeah, look, he worked us really hard. I felt, although I don't have an issue with him at all, I felt his management skills, man management, let him down. I know personally, I had a situation where I was having my wife was having our firstborn, Jordan, and I'd gone into the office and sat down with him and said, look, all I want is we're going away for that game plan in ahead. If I could drive down to Sydney, so my car would be at the airport. So we used to catch a bus together to Sydney to fly out. And I said, all I want is to have my car at the airport in case Mel gets contractions and I get that phone call. My first kid, I really want to be there. I'm not saying I'm not going to play. Yeah. Can I just drive my car down to Sydney behind the bus? And he said, no. He goes, you got to prioritise. And that was it. He'd lost me there and then. I went, no, get stuffed, or then I won't play. My wife and my first kid comes first. And I was all for football, but don't give me that choice because you're always going to lose. And that's one example. Although I don't think he saw it that way, and I don't think he's a bad person, I just think little moments like that are a defining moment. And I just felt that Gary came in and put in a shape and style that really suited us.
Yeah.
But please don't misunderstand me. I had a lot of time for Nick. I just felt he didn't win the team over. A few results didn't go our way. And I remember I didn't have the best start to the season that second year. And I remember an article coming out. I'm pretty sure it was Les Murray. An article came out on saying that underperforming and I should be leading that team. And it was kick up the backside for me. And then I look back on it and think, well, was that the turn that I had that season? But yeah, a few factors played out that we didn't start well. But in hindsight, I think they made the right decision.
Yeah, and were you obviously Dutchy was put in on a temporary basis and was sort of only really given the rest of the season after the first couple of games and had an almost immediate turnaround. How was it? Was it something that were you considering that there was possibly another coach going to come in, or you guys were just focused on trying to turn everything around and it sort of didn't really matter what else was going on in the background?
We just wanted to turn it around. We knew the squad was too good not to be performing. So the few things he changed gave us confidence, and the fact that he played 2 6s behind me, gave me a free roll, made a big difference. And we had so much strike power. It really worked for us. Really, really worked for us. As I said, what a massive run. And it was an immediate turnaround. It wasn't like it took weeks. It was straight away. Yeah. So you could tell it was an unhappy group. And it turned straight away, and we went on a great run. Given tactically, it changed a few things, but the core playing group were there. He had the squad. He just had to manage it right.
Yeah. Was he helped a great deal by the first game being against New Zealand?
Maybe. I still think the turnaround was the Adelaide game.
Yep.
Where everyone remembers the game for me scoring that goal.
Yep. We'll get to that in a minute.
I remember the game for Jado handballing the ball and not making us go down 2-1 and getting sent off. So I think that was a big turnaround point in the season, and everyone got on the back of it. I remember the fans that day, and that belief grew from there. But Jado handballing the ball that day was a masterstroke. He gave us a chance to win that game, and the rest is history.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely get into that Adelaide game in a sec. So we talked about the differences in the squad. Were there any differences in with those two squads in the first and second seasons and how they got on with each other? Was the second season squad a lot more close and knit? How did it compare between the two? With how everybody got on, or was it pretty similar?
No, I thought we had good people in both squads. I do feel there was a bit more closeness to the second squad, maybe because we'd done so well and we went on that great run and we had our backs against the wall at the start where we'd picked up 3 points in 7 games. So it might have been that.
Yeah.
But, it was definitely a very close squad and really enjoyed that season.
So after a fourth place finish in season 1 and being bottom of the table after 7 games in season 2, we stormed home to a 3rd place finish to qualify for the finals. You've sort of talked about the last game against Victory, and obviously that's the one that sticks in the supporters' heads the most. But the previous one, a 3-3 draw away to Perth, a time and a team that we've traditionally struggled against. What are your memories of that game? Because it's very rare and still very rare we go away to Perth and end up getting anything from them. A very difficult team to play, even when they traditionally struggle coming into the A-League.
It just shows that we turned the corner, that we were serious. We were serious contenders that year, and again, the very tough trip to Perth. It's an impossible trip to get points out of. Time zones, travel time, and remember for Newcastle, it was worse. So if you're flying out of Sydney, you're going to Perth, you're on a 4-hour flight or 3.5-hour flight, you're there. We're from Newcastle, you had to bus for 3 hours. So it was a day traveling before you got there. So it was a tough journey, a real tough journey. But we got the 3-3 draw, came home and I had destroyed Victory, absolutely destroyed them. And I was never more confident that we would have won it that year. I think had we finished first and second, we win it. Had we beat Adelaide that day, and it's not being disrespectful to a very good Melbourne team, we had the wood on them, and I believe we would have went to Melbourne and beat them.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously that we've sort of touched on that game a couple of times. Are there any other memories of that game, and what was the
actually think
aftermath of the squad?
Melbourne was actually cheering more than the Adelaide supporters that Adelaide won in the penalty shootout.
yeah, exactly.
No, again, the memories I have from that year leading up to that series and the final series, I remember that we had a farewell going to Adelaide to play a major semi-finals. Unheard of. We went to the middle square there and we had thousands of people seeing us off. It was ridiculous. So we definitely got the town behind us and we felt it. And it was an amazing run. It was super. We really enjoyed playing that season.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that was definitely replicated when we were able to qualify for the grand final in season 3. The town certainly gets behind the team when needed. So season 2 for you, with regards to results, probably. I mean, you said you felt you played better in season 2, but season 3, in terms of how it ended up being one of your best seasons. Johnny Warren medalist, goal of the year. You ended up scoring 4 goals. So do you still, even with the accolades you've got in season 2, you still regard season 1 as your better season?
I felt personally that from a personal perspective, I had played better very close or better in season 1. Given I'm not saying I had a bad year the second year, I just felt that I was, I guess, in a good squad, not great squad, a very good squad. I felt I had to work harder, where the second year we had, like I said, we had players everywhere. Bridgie, Milton, Vaughan, Joel and myself. You'd hate to be the coach leaving one of those 5 out, and one had to miss out every week. So
yeah.
Although I was super disappointed the way that second season finished for me personally, I know we didn't win the game, but post-final, what happened post-final with the club, I was really hit hard by it, and probably a key factor in me opting to take the trip to Turkey and leave Newcastle.
Yeah, well, we'll get onto that in just a sec. Obviously, we do have to talk about that goal. Matt McGurr on Facebook said you've got to ask him about that goal. So, round 10, Adelaide, 27th of October 2006. Take us through scoring that goal, and could you hear Dutchy screaming at you to effing pass the ball for about 75% of that run you went on?
I didn't, but it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, because it was definitely something that he mentioned when we talked to him.
Look, it was credit to Jade North and Joel Griffiths. I would have never scored that goal if it wasn't for Joel Griffiths. Everyone knows I wasn't the quickest. And then I think it was Spagnolo that definitely would have caught me. There's no way in hell. And in today's day and age, it would have been caught a block and VAR wouldn't have given the goal. But Joel Griffiths blocks his run and Spagnolo doesn't catch me, and I had no other option but to shoot. But yeah, what a day. What a night. The way the crowd, the team, and I didn't see it. When we score that, I couldn't breathe. I was down the bottom and everyone was on top. So it meant so much to everyone.
Yeah.
Look, super memories. But again, it's credit to Jado who took one for the team, as you put it. And obviously Joel who blocked. Because I'm telling you, there's no way I was that quick. There's no way I would have got the 60 metres I ran with the ball without getting caught with my speed. So I was very, very lucky. Joel used great initiative and blocked.
Yeah, Chris Henderson on Facebook asked, what are your fondest memories of playing for the Jets and living in Newcastle? Maybe that game was probably one of those answers, but what are your memories of living in Newcastle, and where did you like to go?
The lifestyle in general was amazing. I remember I lived on Hannell Street in the apartments, the new apartments there on the bay there. Then I lived in Warners Bay, and I just felt Newcastle such a relaxed lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And today I ended up buying a property in Nelson Bay when I was living in Newcastle, and today that's my holiday spot. I absolutely love it up there, and I ideally would love to live back in Newcastle. Given life gets the best of you, I got 4 kids, school. We're at a really good school that's close to home. So I'm in a point in my coaching career that I want to make the most of it. And I guess Sydney's a bigger place with more opportunity. But for me, there hasn't been a lifestyle like Newcastle. You're 5 minutes from the water everywhere. I love my fishing. So relaxed. And I guess because we did so well as well, everyone was so nice to us. Look, everywhere I've been in football, I haven't enjoyed living at a place as much as I did Newcastle. It was amazing, and some great memories from there as a family. I had probably my fondest moment is my son, my oldest son, was born there, so he's a Novocastrian. So for me, that they're great memories, and I absolutely loved it. The relationship I had with the fans was something very different. I guess I always in my career prided myself on being very approachable and talking to kids post game, and I always stayed out for a very long time mingling with the fans. But I just had a super relationship with the fans, and then forever grateful for it because they really made me feel like an Novocastrian, like I was one of theirs.
Yeah, absolutely. Tommy Jet on the Newcastle Football.net forums asked your favourite Jets teammate over the 2 seasons?
Don't do that to me. Look,
you're going to be throwing him under the bus in a minute anyway, so feel free.
Purely based on friendships that I still hold. And look, I could mention the whole team, but the 4 that stood out for me is obviously Matt Thompson, who are still very close mates, Andrew Durrani, who was in my bridal party, Milton Rodriguez I became very close to because of the language barrier. So I spent a lot of time with him. So obviously I really enjoyed my time with Milton, and some of the stories he told me, wow. So he was a great person as well. And Mark Bridge, he was a young boy that I tried to take under my wing, and then was a superb kid and still super close mates now. But please, I could mention the whole team because they were legends. The group, the players, was an amazing year.
All right, so we have to get to it now, I suppose. The time you left after receiving the Johnny Warren Medal and all the other accolades from season 2. So your main reasons behind leaving the Jets for Turkey, and how did the deal come about? Was it something that sort of happened fairly suddenly, or was it something that was sort of in the pipeline for a little while? You were mulling over going back overseas, or was it something that came up fairly quickly?
I definitely had a burning desire to go back overseas. I'm not going to lie to anyone about that. I wanted to prove that I could do it over there, that I could stick it out, that I had unfinished business overseas. So whether it was that year, the year after, I wanted to go. Not because I wasn't enjoying Newcastle, just from a football perspective, I wanted to play at the highest possible level. I wanted to play for the national team. So that was something I wanted to do. I had an agent approach me halfway through the year, and I'm not going to get into that story because it's disrespectful as he's passed since now. But I didn't enjoy my dealings with that agent at the time, and then it wasn't. But he did come to me with an offer, but it was very shady, and all to do with it was shady. But I managed to get a deal overseas, which was very hard for me because I didn't have an EU passport. So he got me the deal overseas. But I think the tipping point was post the losing game. There was an incident that happened, and it really took me back because I loved my time at Newcastle. I loved the club. I loved the coaching staff. I was Gary Van Egmont's biggest advocate that he turned the season around. And I felt like I got smashed for doing something that I'd done no wrong. So unbeknown to me, I had an interview. An article came out on the day that everyone flew to Adelaide. So it was a full-page article that came out, and the heading was Nick credits Nick Theo for the season.
Mm.
And obviously that wouldn't go down well with Dutchy. I had no idea that heading had come out. What had happened was 2 nights before I got told, or the night before the game, or 2 nights before I got told that a reporter was going to call me from Sydney and do an interview with me. I still don't know who the reporter was. I wasn't young at the time. I wasn't naive. It wasn't a mistake, but I spent a good hour and a half pumping Dutchy up, pumping the players up, saying how good we were as a squad. What a turnaround. The whole interview was based on how much I praised everyone.
Mm.
Unbeknown, this guy was apparently mates with Nick Theo.
Yeah.
And he asked me, the very last question, he asked me, do you attribute any of this to Nick Theo? And like I told you before, I plain and simple said he worked us super hard in the preseason. So yes, the preseason he worked us really hard. I wasn't going to go and hammer someone publicly. I didn't think that was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So I played a straight back and said he gave us a really hard preseason.
Mm.
And I didn't hammer him. I didn't get into it, but I'd got along with Theo, although I didn't agree with certain things and told you had a few issues.
Yep.
I still didn't think he was a bad guy. I wasn't going to hammer him or get involved into football politics. So I played it back straight.
Yep.
And I was comfortable with the interview because I spent an hour and a half pumping Dutchy up, pumping the boys up. Anyway, unbeknown to me, post that game, the article comes out. I didn't know about it. I didn't see the article. I was in Adelaide playing. We lose the game. We get given 2 weeks off. And I had a few of the boys ring me and say, have you spoke to Dutchy? And I went, no, why? Apparently he's fuming at you. And I couldn't understand why.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a heads up why he was angry at me. And we had a meeting in the offices. They were going to tell us the plan for next year. And they asked me to stay back after the meeting. And I was lucky enough, I got given the heads up why. And I remember Dutchy and, our assistant, help me out here.
Jonesy? Mark
Jonesy, sorry. I apologize. Jonesy, old age.
Yep.
Jonesy sitting in this room. And they get this 2-page article or whatever it was, and they throw it in front of me. And I lost it. I absolutely lost it. Mm. And George Diolio comes in, and George, I really got along with George. He was a gentleman, a really good person. And he goes, do you guys need help in here? And I said, help for what? I did nothing wrong. And I was ropeable at the fact that Dutchy had spent 2 weeks fuming at me and talking to players.
Yeah.
And not confronting me and asking me and calling me in for a meeting like I was a little kid that I'd done something wrong. When all I'd done, and then I highlighted in that meeting when they threw me the paper and said, what's this? And I highlighted all the bits that I spoke to him and said what I'll tell you today, that I'm not going to hammer no one publicly. That's not the right thing to do. So the fact that he was mates with a journalist that I didn't know about, well, so be it. Had you spoke to me the day after, I would have said it to you, and it was done and dusted. But that one really got to me. It really did, because we'd done so well. And I'm not saying the reason I left.
Yeah.
And I don't have no issues with Dutchy. I really like Dutchy, and I felt he did an amazing job. But I couldn't understand why he'd taken it that way. I still don't know till today. And it was this big issue over absolutely nothing. And the article was in quotes by me that Dutchy turned our season around.
Yeah.
How good he'd done. So for me, that one really got to me, because I felt really loved in Newcastle, and obviously played so well for him because he got the best out of me. And for him to turn on me so quickly like that, was really hard to take.
Yeah, and unfortunately, not an uncommon story in football anywhere in the world. It happens all over the place, and people take things the wrong way, and that's just how football politics ends up, unfortunately. Um, Look, the other thing before we end up talking about being in Turkey, was there any sense of regret from you? I mean, with everything that you just detailed, any sense of regret that you didn't hang around for that extra season and take part in what happened in season 3, or you were happy to that
I
point
was
in your
happy
life
because
you
they
needed to
won,
get
because
yeah.
I usually when I left, teams would win. So I thought I did Newcastle a favour.
It,
No,
it,
look, probably if I look back on my career, I don't regret anything.
mm,
What I can say is,
would have
could
been
I have
nice.
been at Jets for the rest of my career? Financially and internationally, and I wouldn't have achieved as much as I did. Probably wouldn't have benefited me as much. But look, I flirted with the idea. Could I have signed? And then you got to understand, I was the longest contract signing person ever. I mean, I signed a 4-year deal the first year when I came to Newcastle.
Mm,
And as I said, I wasn't on big money at the time. We had players like Tezza and that were super important to get. So I wasn't on big money, and I'd done really well that first year. And I had 3 years left on my contract, and renegotiated the contract with Con. I went up into his markets, and me and Con sat there, and I won't go into details, but gosh, I love that guy. Anyway, him and Rem gave me an extra 2 years. So I was on
yeah.
a 5-year contract for my second contract there.
Mm,
He gave me an upgrade, but he wanted more years. And the gentleman's agreement was that if a club had come in for me, he'd get to name the price,
yeah.
which happened with the Turkey move. He
Yeah.
got to name his price. I didn't say no until he named his price. But I do believe there could have been a bit of a push internally because of what happened to sell me at a cheaper price. So I think it was 650 or 700. I don't remember, but
I think the 600 with the on-sell clauses when the Bristol move happened, I think it ended up being about 800 grand.
okay. So again, I do I feel with me on a 4-year contract left, the club would have let me go if I didn't have that argument with Dutchy? No way. No way in hell. So was it pushed? And then in hindsight, it worked. They won the final the next year. But I guess I look at it, could at that point I've gone to a marquee player and been a one club player the whole time, and stayed at Newcastle? That's something I would have loved, but I definitely don't regret where my journey took me. We had some amazing experiences post.
And considering what happened post season 3 for a number of years and the seasons of disappointment, it was probably a good time to get out. Maybe a year too early, but you've gone into those. So
It
look,
wouldn't have happened. If I
yeah.
stayed there, it wouldn't have happened.
That's what we want to hear. Look, so after many assumed you'd end up at Fenerbahce, you ended up at Gencerbirligi. Can you pronounce that? There's a
Gencerbirligi. And
Okay.
I'm telling you, when I jumped on the plane that day, I wasn't going to Fenerbahce. I was going to Trabzonspor.
Oh, right.
And don't ask me. Like I said, I don't ever want to talk about
Yep.
that
No,
deal. But from one day to another, I went from
it
signing
changed.
to Trabzon to going to Gencerbirligi. Although,
Well, how did
it
you
was a
how did
great
you
life.
find the club, and how did you find Turkey overall?
Very tough to live in. It was really tough for me and my wife. I was at a point that I was going to quit football. I was there for 6 months. Super people, love their facilities, but they had a culture there that you had to be in camp the whole time.
Mm.
And I wasn't coping well without seeing my son. He was 9 months old when I took him there. So I couldn't cope with the fact that I'd go in there, have breakfast in the morning, which was great. You'd go out, train, you'd come back, you'd have lunch there, but then you had to go to your room and sleep for a few hours. Then you'd come out, train again, have dinner, and you weren't allowed out till 8:30 at night. And my son was asleep by then when I got home. So, and that was every day.
Yeah.
So I couldn't deal with that. And when I spoke to him, I'd be like, I lived 5 minutes from the training fields. Can I go home in between? And they were like, no, the Turkish players aren't professional enough. And my argument was, mate, all I do is live and breathe football. All I want to go do is see my family. So I really found that hard and really struggled with that.
Yeah.
Really struggled with that. And after 6 months, had I not got the move to England, I was ready to retire.
All right.
I'd spoken to the coach there and said, if I don't get a move out of here, and the fourth coach that I had there was an absolute legend, a great person, a really good person. I can't remember his name. I'm terrible with names, but he was the captain of Galatasaray.
Yeah.
And he came in and he really liked me. And I remember having a meeting with him and said, I don't want to be here no more, but I want you here. And I said, whatever you have to do, get rid of me. I'm retiring. And I explained the reasons. And he said, okay, no problems. I'll let the club know. The club still didn't want to get rid of me. I'd only been there for 6 months. And I went and played in that game in Nigeria and got phone calls from that game for a move to England, and the rest is history. We managed to get our Maltese passport in 2 or 3 days, thanks to my wife. It was ridiculous. If I tell you the story, it was crazy. But my wife got a Maltese passport in 2 weeks,
wow.
Which meant I could sign in Bristol and play there. Or else I hadn't had the 75% of internationals. I wouldn't have been able to go there. So I think someone upstairs looked after me, and as it turned out, I managed to leave Turkey. Although a lot of fond memories and life experiences, I couldn't deal with the fact that I wasn't seeing my baby and my wife as much.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's fair enough. So you spent a short deal of time at Bristol before you went to Crystal Palace. So how did you find the time at Bristol? And you ended up only spending 6 months there, but before you left, you guys ended up making the Championship playoff final at Wembley against Hull that you unfortunately lost thanks to Dean Windass. But what was it like playing for Bristol and playing in such a massive game? That game's widely touted as being worth about £60 million to the team that wins it.
Yeah, the day I lost the most money in my life so far. But yeah, look, Bristol was an amazing experience. It was only a short period, but we played good football there, had a great bunch of boys, a really well-organised, structured team. And we actually tried to play football there. So it suited me to a T. It was obviously very hard for me because it was Lee Johnson. Gary Johnson was a coach and Lee Johnson was his son.
Yeah.
And he played a similar role that we did. And the kid was phenomenal. He was a brilliant player. He's their coach now. A really good football brain and a really good person. So I was pretty much competing
with the coach's son.
For a position. I ended up winning my spot in the back end of the year, and then in that central role, because we played a 4-4-2. He tried me in a few different spots, but the way we played there in England, I could only play the middle role.
Yeah.
And I ended up winning my spots, and even the playoff final, I started over Lee, and I'd done really well in the lead up to the final. Unfortunately, we had a really big injury early on in the game, which changed a few things, the dynamics of that game, and a few things. We had a sickness the night before, which changed the lineup again as one of our centre backs. So there was a few different factors, but yeah, what an experience there. It was a brilliant experience, good football. And then my best and worst decision of my career came, I guess.
Yeah. Well, talk us through that. What was the reasoning behind leaving Bristol and going to Crystal Palace?
I got a really good offer.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. I was getting 27, 28, and I hadn't made massive money in my career till then. I'd obviously played a long time, but not made. And I started thinking of family and what I wanted to do, and the money difference between Palace and Bristol was a big amount. Had we got promoted? No, but the money difference was too much, and Warnock wanted me. And I'll still say this till today. The best and worst decision I made, because obviously financially it was amazing. Neil Warnock, still today, I hold so much fond memories of him. Probably the best man manager I had in my career. But we could not be more different in football philosophies and styles and what suited me. So it didn't suit me.
Yeah.
Playing there, and it didn't get the best out of me. I think my stats went from Bristol. I was getting the ball 50 to 60 times a game, and I needed to be involved in a game. At Palace, I was touching the ball 12, 13 times, and it was off second balls and running in behind, and I was slow,
Yeah.
so it wasn't a virtue of mine. So it didn't suit me at all. So from a football perspective, it was the worst. And please don't misunderstand that I didn't like Neil, because, as I said, probably, and I know everyone knows Neil Warnock and his persona and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate to play against him,
Mm.
but what a legend if he's your coach. I remember he's
Especially in the championship. Championships, he's bread and butter. He's really good at getting teams from the championship up into the Premier League.
I remember I got sent off in a game, and I go into the offices, and obviously they told me what my fine was. Obviously, you get fined over there for red cards, and
Yep.
Neil loved big tackles. So he goes, I'll try to look after you on this one. But anyway, as it turned out, my wife was flying home pregnant with Geordie and my Dion, and I went into the offices, and the boy said, "Why don't you just fly him home? Yeah, we got an international break, plus you're suspended for the next game. He'll let you go." And I looked at Paul Eiffel at the time and said, "No chance," because we were at Palace together. I said, "There's no way he's going to let me. I just got sent off." He goes, "You don't know him very well yet, do you?" I'd gone in, knocked on his door, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, "Gaff, I'm not playing next week, and it's international break. My family were flying home. Do you mind if I fly them home?" And we're talking a big flight, huh? We're not talking, you're going to France an hour away and you're back the next day. And he turned around and looked at me. He looked at his sheets, how many games I'd played. Turned around and he goes, "How many games you've played?" "Yeah, you've played every game, most minutes." He goes, "You're going to work hard for me over there, Nicky." I said, "I'll train every day." He gave me like 10 days off.
Mm.
I remember getting back, starting the game. I got back and scoring for him. But I wanted to play for him.
Yeah.
Given he didn't get the best out of me, but his man management skills were phenomenal. And I was ultimate professional that I came back and was training every day. But I got to fly my wife home, and then I got to go back 7 or 8 days later, and I got to play the next game. And I would have ran through a brick wall for him. Even it didn't suit my style.
Yeah.
But the utmost respect for him. And then I say it openly, we didn't have the same football style, and I didn't agree with his football style, but absolutely loved him.
But it's what worked for him. The other coach you served under at Palace before you left was Paul Hart. Was there much of a difference in football philosophies between the two? Do you think Paul did anything different to get anything better out of you at the time?
Paul was only there for a short period. So by that time I was ready to move on and wasn't enjoying my football there at all.
Yeah.
At all. I wasn't the same player I was when they signed. I didn't enjoy football. I never touched the ball. So
the quote I remember was you sitting there watching it go over your head in midfield. That was one of the quotes from the papers.
And look, I'm not saying there's right or wrong. I'm just saying it didn't suit me. So yeah, I didn't have much to do with Paul Hart. He's not someone who I can tell you stories about or had great memories with or bad memories. I do remember we managed to stay up that year. But, it was time for me to move on. But, again, very fond memories of Neil Warnock, although we didn't see eye to eye in football perspective. And I think we both had mutual respect for each other because I think he saw that I didn't suit him, but he also saw the hard work and the work ethic that I had and that I was a very good professional there.
So it was you really wanted to leave Crystal Palace. Was that to return home to Australia, or were you still looking at other opportunities in Europe or possibly the Premier League, or did you want to come home to Australia?
No, the Premier League was not an option. Now, after that first year, there was I'd done really well and my name had gone about, but I don't feel that in those years at Palace, I did enough to merit a premiership move. Do I think I was good enough at 26, 27? Maybe I would have loved to have been given the opportunity and if we won that game, and I would have loved to have played there. But yeah, there was no talk for me at the back end of the premiership. I hadn't played football for 2 years. I say I've played, but it wasn't the style that suited me. So no one saw the best out of me there at Palace. It was very, very different football style to what I was used to. So, yeah, there was talk of me going elsewhere. There was a few offers, but it didn't eventuate. And I always felt that I'd come back to Newcastle.
Yeah, which is literally the next question. So so we talked, thanks to Brett Griffo for his questions on Neil Warnock. I think we pretty much answered that. But so the question from Tommy Jett and Brett Griffo: were you offered a deal to come back to the Jets? If yes, was it money for your signing with Sydney or the way we were run at the time? Or if no, were you insulted not to get an offer to come back to the Jets? How did the move back to Australia happen, and were the Jets involved at any point?
Of course they were. I always said that I'd go back to the Jets, and I think this was misinterpreted at the time that I didn't come back. My first phone call when I decided to come home was to Newcastle Jets. Mm. And till today, I still have a really good relationship with Con, and I love him to death. But at the time, I got offered a 3-year deal. I got offered Marquee at Sydney, and I got offered Marquee at Jets on 3 years. And Sydney was 4 years, I think. The money difference was huge.
Yeah, it was like nearly 2 million, I think, from what I remember from the reports for the
Okay, I'm not going to go into figures. All I will
right.
say was the money was a big difference.
Yeah.
I went back and said to the Jets, well, I know you can't compete with money. Give me longevity. Give me a 5-year deal. And there was just this reluctancy to give me the deal that the term I wanted, not the money, because I knew we couldn't compete.
Yeah.
But if you gave it to me over 5 years, then maybe it could have come close and I would have seen my career out there. It didn't eventuate. They couldn't do it, and I couldn't understand why. Because I would have taken less money to play at Jets at that point. Given there was a big price difference, make it up to me on 5 years. You get me longer. Even if the back end I wasn't as good, you got me at my good years, you know?
Yeah.
But I couldn't understand why. It baffled me at the time. If I fast forward a few years, I then realized that at the time Con was struggling in terms of finances, which I wasn't privy to, I wasn't aware of. So I just felt like they didn't really want me. All I'm asking for is an extra 2 years. Just give me a 5-year deal.
Yeah.
Done. And Sydney was super. But yeah, it wasn't Con's fault, Jed's fault. It wasn't my fault. We just couldn't come to the agreement. But what I will tell you is I did speak to them first. They did have first dibs on me when coming home, which what I said I will. And given obviously money has a part to play in a professional careers. I've had no one post-football come up to me and go, here's $5 million for your retirement. So you look after your family. So I had to do what's best for my family. But I will say I was willing to take a massive portion less per season had I got the longer deal with Jets, because I love my time there so much and really wanted to come home to the Jets.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of my questions was to be about, in hindsight and with all the money problems that Con was having at the time, did that change your opinion? So that's pretty much answered it. And you're one of the few players that did end up making a move to another A-League club that never ended up getting booed from you playing for Sydney. That never happened. Unfortunately, that didn't happen for Bridgie or any of the other players that changed jerseys at the time. But so there was definitely a disappointment at the time that you weren't able to come back. But I think with the benefit of hindsight, quite a few people sort of put 2 and 2 together and figured it out.
I couldn't understand it at the time. For me, I didn't know the financial situation the club was at. And you've got to remember, I got so much respect for Con. He poured millions of dollars into football, and he really cared. So I just couldn't get it. I really couldn't get it. I guess you go back years, and please, I got nothing but fond memories of Con. I love him to death. His slaps on the back of the head he used to give us, that he's famous for. I love the guy, and how much he he put back to our game. Just, again, I didn't realise where he was in a financial position at that time and where the club was.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he could have offered me the extra years or if it was a football decision, but I guess looking back at it, I understand it. And there was a lot of uncertain times that happened with the club in the years to follow, which it was really sad to see.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll gloss over most of the time at Sydney FC for time purposes, but we'll get to the injury you got in December 2014 playing against Melbourne, I think it was, ended up going down with a knee injury and needing an ACL operation. Was the concern at the time that this might be a long-term thing, or was the prognosis pretty good after the injury that you'd be able to recover and come back, and you were planning on coming back to continue your football career? Was there any issues after the operation that you thought in 18 months' time you'd have to call it a day because your knee hasn't?
So post-injury, I had it in my head that I still wanted to play. I think it was well reported. From Sydney perspective, absolutely love my time. So now, if you ask me who I support, it's Sydney and Jets.
Okay,
so,
that's all right.
Yeah, I know, and I was. You've got to understand.
Yeah,
I hated Sydney when we played against them in that second year in that final series. We hated Sydney, absolutely hated them. But I was fortunate that there was a great supporter group and really enjoyed my football there, although I didn't feel I was at my best there. I think Newcastle got better years out of me.
Yeah.
The first year I had a few injuries. Second year I played really well. Third year I went to the UAE. Fourth year I got back with Frank. And honestly, that name keeps coming up. But gosh, what a bad experience that was for me. Probably the worst year of my career.
Yeah.
And the story, it is ridiculous what happened to me that year. The story is unbelievable, but the background that went to it, and still to today, I have no respect for Frank in terms of what happened to me that year. Or even worse was I can't even remember his name now. He's at Perth Glory now. Tony
Pinata.
Tony Pinata. I lost total respect for both of them that year with what happened to me. It was absolutely embarrassing. I've never come out publicly and told the story, but to be outed the way I did for the reasons that actually I found out happened was absolutely disgusting, and lost total respect for both of them. It was disgusting. So yeah, look, Sydney was tough time, but super good people, super good crowd. The president was an absolute legend. I still get along with him really well. I have a really good relationship. And as I said, I'm a fan of both clubs. But when I got injured, that year that Frankie had put me aside and sent me out, Arnie came in the following year and gave me my lease of life back. I wasn't a regular under him, but he showed me the respect I deserved. And Arnie's management skills from when I first had him as a youngster, as an assistant to Frank in the Olympic team, to then when I had him in the Asian Cup, to when I had him at Sydney, gosh, it improved. He was amazing at the back end of his career and really made me feel important again. Made me feel like a pro. We had a chat and said, I can't believe what happened last year. And he goes, I'll give you a chance and then it's up to you. And when we sat down post preseason, he goes, I can't believe what they told me. I don't see anything of what they told me. And I said, I warned him about a few things and I was right in all of them. As it panned out, whatever I told him that day panned out over the long period, being struggles that he saw and had. It's no surprise there was a mass exodus in coaches that post that year. So I felt that me and him found a respect for each other and was really enjoying it with him. Really enjoying it with him. I got injured and thought, no, I will play again. So in my head was, how quick can I get fit? And then when I put something in my head, I was a bit of a maniac. I would work so hard to get back fit, and I was doing everything right. I remember Corey Gamero and Ali Abbas had both had their ops before me.
Yeah.
We had testing 10 weeks post or something, and I was miles ahead in strength because I'd put in so much work in. Then I got told to start running, and I was only 10 weeks post, and I ran at Sydney Football Stadium when it was raining one day. Actually, I was 10 weeks post, and I did the warm-up with the team.
Yeah.
Anyway, cut a long story short, it was ridiculous. I was 10 weeks post, and I think back and go, what was I thinking? I did the laps, I did the in and out, and I did the big shiver we had, and I was 10 weeks post. Then I had a running program, and I did the running program, and I couldn't get through it.
Yeah.
I remember getting home that day, and I couldn't walk out of the car. I was limping. And I said to my wife, I've done something to my knee again. And when I spoke to the physios at the time, I was like, nah, your first week back of running, it's normal, XYZ. We're coming into a run at the back end of the year, final series and stuff. So I sort of got put on the back burner. By no misdoing of anyone, it just happened that way. I wasn't priority. I wasn't going to be back for that year. So I kept saying, my knee's no good.
Yeah.
Oh, no, you'll be right. You'll be right. Do some swimming, rest it. So I started swimming and doing my exercises, but this pain wouldn't go away. Post, when we lost the final to Melbourne, I went into the physio and said, mate, I need to get it checked. So they got me a scan, and I had bone bruising. And I went, okay, what's bone bruising? And how long does it take? When will I be back? And it sort of was a massive slap in the face because I was working so hard. And they said, well, how long's a piece of string? And I went, what do you mean? They said, we don't know. And it sort of really put a realism that could be it for me because I wasn't getting younger.
Yeah.
I'd been a pro since I was 15. So the body wasn't feeling the best at all times. I mean, I know the back end, every training session, my heels were killing me, but I refused to take injections anymore for my bursts. So for the first 10, 15 minutes of every session when I was older, I was with pain and I'd just run through it. But I didn't want no more injections because I had that many cortisones in my career that it wasn't funny. So my body wasn't the best as is. Now they're telling me I got bone bruising and they're telling me there's no timeline.
Yeah.
And as it panned out, for 2 years, I could not run. I remember playing in a charity match, an indoor game, that it'd been 2 years since I'd done any running. I still had pain in my knee, but I wanted to do this event.
Yeah.
And I got the ball at the back, my first touch. I passed the ball and I fell over myself. And I went, so unfit. My knee's still hurting. I can't even run around with my kids. So I went into the specialist and said, I need this checked out. I got to get rid of this bone bruise. It's been 2 years. By then I knew I wasn't playing anymore. Yeah. I was too long out of the game and the knee still felt no good. I'd put 10 kilos on. I was way gone. They took a massive chunk of bone out and they said to me, you will never be able to do what you did as an athlete, which in turn retired. But I was gone before that when they couldn't tell me how long my injury recovery was going to be. And it really took it out of me because I was working so hard and I'd done so well. But I had really big legs as a player. And although I looked like my muscle had come back in my knee, it wasn't enough for me to start running that early. But that's football. I sort of see it as I was blessed that I got my worst injury when I was 32, 33 years old and I had an 18-year professional career, you know. So I couldn't complain. Was it the way I liked to go out? Definitely not. And I really wanted to finish off playing. But again, I look at the positives. I got 18 years before I got my serious injury. So I'm not complaining at all. It wasn't the way I wanted to go out. And it was very tough because I coming on in that game and I was too keen. I should have never sprinted in as quick as I did that day. And everyone goes, it was a bad tackle. I remember getting a yellow, but I was just so keen because I wanted to play and I was still eager like a bloody 18-year-old kid who still wanted to play, you know. So if Arnie put me on for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it was, I had that much respect for him that I was going to give 100%. But what people don't realise is that my knee buckled, hence why my leg came up so high and I tackled. It was a bad tackle, but my knee had buckled on me, had given way when I tried to stop. So, yeah, it was one of those that football is football. I still consider myself super blessed.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll finish off with a couple of supporters' questions and then the Jetstream 10 questions. So, Ivan on Twitter said he recalls chatting to you when you left in 2008 and you said that your ultimate goal was to play in Spain. He wants to know, did you have any regrets of not achieving that, and did the opportunity ever come up?
No, it didn't. It was tough. I was super lucky to get the offer in England. I would have loved to have played in Spain. I thought my attributes really would have suited there.
Yeah, definitely.
Never was close to, never had any offers from there. And again, it was very tough for me with the EU passport, and some rules changed, and we were lucky at that later point that my wife was managed to get her Maltese and I managed to get my passport that let me play in England. But yeah, it's something I would have loved to experience.
So Brett Griffo asked a question about, did you have a favourite club? And you've already answered that, which is great. So before we get on to the Jetstream 10 questions, where you can throw as many of your former teammates under the bus as you like, you're coaching kids in the skills acquisition program with Southern Districts and identifying talent in the 9 to 12-year-old age group for the Sydney FC Academy. Was coaching kids something you were always interested in? And when did you sort of begin to consider youth coaching and development as a path once your playing career was wrapping up? When did the coaching bug bite?
Oh, look, I've always had it. I always felt I knew tactically, and I always had my opinion with coaches and my thoughts. And then I actually wish I would have done my badges while playing. I think you look at football very differently now. Anyway, I started coaching young kids purely because of my oldest son, and really enjoyed it and got more and more involved. I've done it for 8 or 9 years now. I've gone from absolutely loving the kids side, and kids are so innocent and they just want to play and they just want to have fun, to really identifying what I really want to do, and that's being a senior coach. I never even thought of being a senior coach, and 3 years ago our club was playing in NPL 3 level and our youth was playing NPL 2. So I kept saying to the club, get us promoted. We need to stay in NPL 1. We've lost so many kids to Sydney Wanderers, which was great, but they wanted to keep the rest of the kids at our club, and we'll never keep them because we were a lower division.
Yeah.
So I thought, stuff it. I got enough experience. I got enough knowledge. I'll take the first grade squad and we'll get them promoted. And it was a throw out in the air line that then I ended up doing this massive plan on, and it took us 2 years. I thought I'd get it done in 1 year, but it took me 2 years to get promoted on not a big budget for the league that we did. So it was an amazing achievement last year. And it really made me realise the minute I started coaching senior football, long term, it's what I want to do.
Yeah.
Be a senior coach. The fact that it's result driven and you got to win, it gives me that buzz of when I used to play. Like I said, I love the youth development. I love the kids, but I want to be a senior coach one day, and slowly giving myself a plan to get where I want to be.
Absolutely. And it's the ultimate aim to coach in the A-League and then international overseas somewhere, or you're not looking that far ahead?
My own goal's pretty high, although there's a long way to go. It's my third year of senior coaching. I'm in an NPL 2 level now in Sydney. I want to make sure I do that properly, try to push my club up to NPL 1 in the senior level, and then see what happens from there. But I'm doing my licenses. I'm on middle of my A now, but it sort of has taught me where I want to go with senior level. Do this or you don't play. We're kids. It's about development. It's not about the result, I don't believe. Not to say that you shouldn't want to win as a kid, but as coaches, it should be more on the development side.
Yeah.
Where seniors, it's about winning. And look, please don't misunderstand this. Parents can be an absolute nightmare. I've had so many good ones. The majority are good, but the small minority ruin it for for people in the game that don't end up doing it because there's such hard work to deal with.
Yeah. All right. Mate, you've been absolutely fantastic with your time. So we'll finish off with the Jetstream 10 questions. You can feel free to throw any of your Jets teammates under the bus at any point. So the first one is the Jets have an initiation ritual now where you've got to, when you join the club, you've got to get up and sing a song in front of everybody. What were there any initiation rituals at any of the other clubs that stand out? Was there something that happened at any of the other clubs you played at?
Yeah, very similar to Bristol. I had to get up and sing, and I swore I'd never do it again. And I got myself in a bit of trouble at Sydney for not doing it. I had to pay a massive fine.
Yeah, that's usually how you get out of it.
Yeah, I can't sing. I'm terrible. I do it now with my first graders at the club. It's good for a bit of laugh and banter, but we never take it too serious. It's more about them making them feel welcome.
Do you remember what song you sang?
No, and look, it's something I'd never do again. It was embarrassing. I'm terrible. I don't even like getting up talking in front of people, let alone singing. So yeah, it was horrendous at the time.
All right. Who had the best dress sense and who had the worst? If you can remember this far back, it can cover any of the players that you played with if you can't remember Jets specifically.
I'm trying to think of the Jets. You're going to make me throw people under the bus, and I don't want to do that.
No, that's all right.
Look, best. I'd have to say Bowler. Oaks, obviously, very suave person.
Still is.
Bowler, best. Worst, I'm going to give that one a miss.
I'm
not going to say...
Pleading the fifth.
I'm not going to say Rocket Ready.
Okay, fair enough. Who had the best taste in music and who had the worst?
I wasn't much of someone who went out much partying with the boys. So, yeah, I'm not too familiar with that. I do know I was more R&B boy, so can't tell you that one.
Yep, no, that's all right. Who drove the best car and who drove a clanker?
Best car. You're killing me with these questions.
Yeah, it's a long time ago.
You're making my memory work. You know, it was a long time ago. Huh? Look, Ivy's going to want me to say him. He loves his car, and I think it was an RX-8. So I'm going to give Ivy best car. Not that I'm into cars or like cars, but he was massive with his cars. So I think if I give Ivy best car, he'll be buzzing with that.
You don't remember who drove a really horrible one?
No, I remember I did when I was at Sydney Olympic, my second car. But yeah, that's about it.
Who spent the most time in front of the mirror?
Everyone's going to say me.
Tomo did.
I'm going to say Griffo.
Yep, no, that's fair enough. Best player you ever played with?
Abroad or at the Jets?
Probably total time.
Total time. Oh, wow. Look, we played with Victor Moses, who was phenomenal. Mo Sedan in the UAE. I played with some very good players. Believe it or not, one of the best players I played with in Australia, and anyone who's played with him will tell you, and I played with him at Olympic, was Troy Halpin.
Yeah.
And he's an Overcastrian. I have to say he was, wow.
Yeah.
What he could do was ridiculous. But at the Jets, I mean, I could mention any of the boys. They're all freaks and loved playing with them.
Best player you ever played against?
Messi, easy.
Yep. What player did you hate facing in the A-League? That could be Jets or Sydney FC. One name on the team sheet that you looked at and you went, oh, God, we've got to play him again.
Well, when I played for the Jets, I just hated the whole Sydney team. You could have put the whole team in there. Millsy, who's an absolute legend of a guy. I hated playing against him. And he's a great guy. Yeah. I remember Rudin. I couldn't stand playing against him. Not because I felt he was a hard defender. I just hated the persona and Sydney at the time. So, yeah. Like I said, all good people. But at that time, there was that real rivalry, especially after that game that Broski got sent off at home and we ended up beating them in the home and away series. There was a massive rivalry with the teams.
Yeah.
And I could say I hated them all playing against them, but personally, no problems with any of them.
Best jokester or prankster from your time at the Jets?
Rocket Reddy was good. I didn't mind a prank either. Reddy was a funny guy to play with. Reddy's a good guy and a very funny guy. Sometimes he could take it that little bit too far, but yeah, he was definitely a prankster.
And the final question, if you never became a footballer, what do you think you might have done instead?
I have no idea because I was always going to be a footballer. I just had nothing else. That there was plan A was plan B, C, and D. So, and I think that's something that's missing a lot these days. That drive I want. The ability's there, but we don't give them the realism of showing them that they can get there. You know, I remember being on $30 a week at Olympic as a 15-year-old, and that first game, the boys were chanting after the game, and they told me how much the win bonus was, and I nearly fell down. I was the most money I've ever seen in my life. So, it made me really want to be a footballer, where I don't think that's there as much anymore.
Well, Nick, mate, you've been absolutely fantastic with your time and your answers. It's been an absolutely fascinating chat. I hope everyone's enjoyed it. Really thank you for your time and making yourself available, and we really hope to see you up in Newcastle at some point, and we can go and grab a coffee somewhere along the beach and have a chat.
There at Christmas time. I always get Griffo to get me tickets, and I always manage to get to a few of the games over Christmas period. It's my time off, so we go up to Nelson Bay, and because we're close and we're still supporters, we go up there and always really enjoy it.
Mate, fantastic. We really appreciate your time and hope to see you again soon. Thanks very much.
No worries. You're welcome.